certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law June 16, 2021. This meeting will be conducted by a remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough
Well, we're live on YouTube. The meeting is being recorded.
I just lost all of you. I don't know if it was just me.
I think it was just you, but you're back now.
I am back. Can everyone hear me? I
Yes.
don't really know what the problem is. Okay, if you can still hear me, let me continue. All members of the Northborough Open Space Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows Northborough Open Space Committee to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. This meeting will not feature public comment. Once again, I apologize for all that technical difficulty. Welcome, everyone. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I'm going to take a roll call then of those in attendance. Starting with Michelle,
Here.
Bill Pierce,
Here.
Dan Clark,
Here.
Scott Rogers,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Brian.
Here.
I can see you, Brian. Wesley,
Here. Ashley.
John, can you hear us?
Ashley,
I'm here. I think John's connection is not great.
This is Mia. I can finish reading the script while John gets connected. Meeting business ground rules. The chair will cover the ground rules for effective and clear conduct of the meeting business as follows. For presenters and our applicants listed on the agenda, the chair will invite each speaker by name to make a presentation. Participants will provide their full name and hold it until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking, and to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait till the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board or committee shall be conducted by roll call vote.
Mia, I could hear you. Can you guys hear me again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I had to move to a different room. I don't know if it'll be better. I hope so. Again, my apologies for the confusion. Okay, we've taken the roll. We've taken the initial readings. Let's get into it. I'm sorry for being all disjointed. First item on our agenda was the project update on the Whitney Street properties. Mia, would you be able to fill us in on this?
Sure, we received a written withdrawal for the purchase and sale. The purchase and sale for 429 and 432 Whitney Street has fallen through. And it's been taken off the Board of Selectmen agenda. On another note, we did receive a progress meeting request for someone who is interested in a new purchase and sale. So we're not sure if a new purchase and sale has been already signed, but that prospective buyer has already requested a meeting with staff.
Yeah, do you know why the other one fell through?
We have no information.
Thank you.
But it should be a more streamlined process next time. You never know. You guys will have to, if that purchase and sale continues to move forward, they will do the same process. They have to repeat everything. They'll have to submit the letter to the Board of Selectmen, who will distribute it to all the boards and committees, and you'll have to consider it again at their purchase price.
Very well, we'll stand by for that. Okay, well, moving on, we don't have that much business tonight, but the major item was to review again the CPA applications that Open Space will sponsor. We spoke about this a bit at the last meeting, at which point we agreed to submit again a request for conservation funding, which I did. I submitted that today. The committee was copied. I went in at the $400,000 request level, which had been our customary maximum. I also got an update on the conservation fund from the town accountants. The fund with the last 400,000 from town meeting now has 761, roughly 761,000. So the case I made in the application is that we expect an opportunity for another land parcel to come up within the year. And that being said, it would deplete the fund down below 400 again. So we'll see how that flies. Any other input on that article that anyone wants to add or make sure we highlight? Hearing none, we've got three other potential articles. Two were sponsored by the Trails Committee. And then Ashley is working on the third. So I guess there were some updates that I heard at the Trails Committee meeting on the two articles for the accessible trail at the senior center, as well as the design of the Aqueduct River Bridge crossing. Brian or Mia, would you want to update the committee as a whole for the updates to those applications?
As far as their actual status right now, or just sort of a review of what we talked about?
What kind of review? Like, I know the scope has become more focused on the Aspet River crossing on the Aqueduct Bridge.
Yeah, so we voted to, as Trails Committee, we voted to move forward with the feasibility study, or move forward with a letter of support for a feasibility study for the Aqueduct Bridge, or whatever the next proper step in that one was, and Mia can expand upon that. And then we also voted to move forward for the next step for the ADA trail as well.
And so, you know, in each case, it's clearly phase one of a multi-phase project, right? And I think that's the way the CPC, the CPC committee would want to hear it, right?
Indeed, yeah, though I think the ADA trail, I think, probably has fewer phases overall, certainly, than the Aqueduct Bridge. There's many fewer players in it.
And on the Aqueduct Bridge, the key piece was that having already had a feasibility study that was found in the past, we're able to skip that step in a sense, right?
I believe that's correct. Mia, can you help me out with what the
Yeah.
technical of how we advance things?
Sure. So, yeah, feasibility study was done in 1990, structure by the town. And then a structural report was done in 2017 by MWRA. So there were 2 steps in. I'd already known this. I brought the project as far as I could to the relocation of utilities. And as part of the normal process for CPA applications, it goes up to the town administrator, who's a wonderful project manager and represents the interests of the town. And when he saw what was available, he changed the scope of the application to, instead of relocation of utilities, it would be preliminary design. So it's preliminary design because we already have an existing 8M permit, which is that permit from MWRA for access for the bridge. So we would have to modify our 8M permit, sort of complete phase 3 of our existing 8M permit for access, and then a second 8M permit for construction. So as that package, we need to hire a consultant to prepare that package, which would include design of the decking and railings, and then all the easements, rights, maintenance, things like that, and as well as relocation of utilities and a deconstructive structural inspection. So it's a little bit broader and further along than what I had hoped for. So I'm happy about it. And we
What about
don't
the
have a
dollar-
number.
Oh, that's my next question.
I was able to reach out to the structural engineer who completed the 2017 report, Stantec, and they are going to get us a number by November 4th. So that'll be ready for the conservation and trails meetings in November. And then I spoke with Kathy Jubert, the town planner, and she said she would accept the application because the application is complete, save for that final number. And so Scott Charpentier, the DPW director, he thinks it's going to be $75,000 to $100,000. That's his opinion. And he's very good at this thing, at that type of thing. So we'll see where it comes in.
Very good. So you think you'll have a figure certainly by December?
Yes, hopefully by November 4th.
Okay.
Stantec said they wouldn't have a problem getting us a number for this type of work by then.
Okay.
So
Currently, the CPC is scheduled to meet first week of December.
okay.
So I think having figures by that point would be a good goal. I suspect it'll be January before public hearing starts for a more formal review of the applications.
May I touch on the ADA trail briefly?
Please.
So this CPC application is for $28,500 for the, design of the trail to ADA standards by a landscape architect. Then once that design is complete, I will be completing the environmental permitting. I'll prepare those applications. Once the environmental permitting done, the project will be shovel ready and I will start applying for funding. We'll have to see our timeline on that. A lot of the grant programs are reimbursable. So we will probably be coming back to CPC for a $200,000 ask in the next year or two, hopefully with a plan to get reimbursed by Mass Trails grants or a DOT grant or some type of other grant, even if we break it into different projects.
So the 28,500 number, we're fairly confident in that.
That's from a landscape architect who said he'll complete the design for that amount.
Great. Okay, good. Ashley, do you have any better sense yet of the number that you'll want to come in with this application, assuming that you'll have it put together?
Yeah, I'm still at information gathering stage, but I did get an estimate. I can share that with you all from WDA Waterman Designs. They estimated $85,000 for the multi-use trail feasibility study, and that covers review and confirm the conceptual trail we've already kind of mapped out, prepare and compile existing conditions plans for the trail route based on GIS maps and other plans on file, performing property line, registry of deeds, town file research for right-of-way and ownership, etc. Elevations, all that good stuff. Walk the route with key members of Trails Committee, Open Space Committee, and edit route plans as required. Refine trail design plans to include critical grading, intersection planning, wetlands crossings, compensation, specific design details where layout requires it. and prepare a written summary report describing the trail route challenges and opportunities. It says the summary report will not at this time address the anticipated construction costs. So that's something that I felt like if we wanted, to know, to have a sense of the cost of building this trail, which I feel like we would. Mia, is that something that, sometimes is included in a feasibility study? Because I would want to ask them to include that. And so I feel like we might want to ask for a little more than 85,000.
We could look at specific points, like we could ask for preliminary, maybe a recommendation of a starting point. With the 6 mile trail, you would never contract someone to build 6 miles of trail. You would pick
Oh, I see.
from here to there. Like we would start at the easiest point that provides the most benefit for, most bang for the buck. So maybe we could ask them to provide that recommendation of a starting point and a construction cost for that starting point.
Okay.
Something like connecting Bartlett Street to the police station, something like that.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so right now 85,000, and I kind of wanted to get a sense from the committee of whether, we should just go for 85,000. Having this estimate doesn't mean we'll go with WDA design. We would bid out, and there's nothing that says another group might not bid more. And I don't know, do we have to go with the lowest bid, Mia, or?
For civil engineering and design, you can just select the firm. You don't have to bid out.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay.
That's
interesting.
news to me too, because I had wanted to go with Stantec, and for the ADA trail, we picked Weston Sampson because we already have a relationship with them. We'd worked with them on some grant applications for this specific trail, and I thought it would be uncomfortable if we had to go bid out, pick someone else.
Right.
Usually the people who have, like WDA is doing the B-Walt, so they
Right.
already have, some, but they don't have any of our plans in Northborough. So someone could outbid them, but I did confirm with Scott Charpentier that for civil engineering and design, you can just select your consultant.
Okay. So then maybe we should just ask for this amount and move forward that way. Okay. Like I said, I'm still kind of in the information gathering stage. I spoke with, I presented before the planning board, and they voted to provide a letter of support. Also before the Trails Committee, who also voted to provide a letter of support. And I spoke with Ally over in Parks and Rec, and they are meeting on November 2nd, and she's going to ask for them to provide a letter of support. So, and Amy Preskey's been working on this a little bit as well. Spoke with Scott Charpentier just to kind of give him a heads up and get his feedback. And he was kind of, sure, let's see what happens. So that's what's been done thus far. I do plan to walk it this week and create better maps. And I do want to call the town of Berlin. I have spoken with the conservation agent in Westboro, and they've completed their feasibility study, but they're still kind of working on refining it. The Conservation Commission had a number of concerns with sensitive areas, the trail crossing sensitive areas, and that not being addressed appropriately. So just something, it was good to talk to them because it's good to know going forward if we do this feasibility study, kind of the pitfalls and what to watch out for. So that's where we're at. And I do have a draft of the application that I can send around as well. I got some good feedback from planning, some questions that they had that I'll add to that before I send it around. But that's where we're at right now.
Ashley, wasn't the potential surfaces or what surfaces you'd be required to have versus what's allowed? Isn't that a major question
Yeah.
to whether this could ever exist on the aqueduct?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question. And the answer that Mia, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, has gotten so far is that there can't be any resurfacing on the aqueduct because it's active. But Mia's having them confirm that with some higher ups. When I spoke with Don Byrne, who's been working on this in Westboro, he said, there are a number of towns that have active aqueduct trails that are resurfacing, but they're doing so along the side, along the right of way where it's not right above the pipe. So I need to explore that further with him and make sure I have all the information on what might be possible before submitting this. So I know a lot to do in a short amount of time, but we'll get there.
Doesn't Westboro have that same challenge in any part of what they were, of the scope they were studying?
I don't think that theirs is along the aqueduct. Yeah. And theirs is a much shorter section. So
Do we have a sense of what they've had to spend for
when I
feasibility
spoke
study
with
so far?
when I spoke with the conservation agent, she said their feasibility study was somewhere in the, gosh, I'm getting all the numbers confused now. I think it was around the same amount, like 83,000. Then I asked, did they get a sense of how much it would cost to build the trail? And she said that their quote was like 23,000.
Ashley, it's
That didn't make
305,000 is where their feasibility study is currently at.
Okay,
And their trail cost is tens of millions. Their proposal includes a tunnel under 495. I mean, it's extensive.
that's not, I mean, she didn't give me any of that information.
I've been working
Um,
with the chairman of the Conservation Commission. He's been
Okay.
following it a little bit more closely.
Yeah, he said he wrote like a 12-page report or something, right?
Yeah, and he went through the warrant articles and because I had put in a request. I put it in an email, so it was in writing,
Yeah.
asking how much.
Okay.
And so she was like, I don't have time to go through the warrant article. So I started to, and then confirmed with, his name's Andy Konisberg, and she said, check with Andy, and Andy tallied it up for me, and it's at 305.
Okay, because they've done 2 feasibility studies.
Yeah, and different drafts.
Okay.
Gone back to the drawing board a couple times.
So the number that she gave me was for construction, but that it didn't sound right to me when she said it. And so where is the millions coming from?
The 23,000 might be the part they've done. Do you know where Tatnick Bookseller is on Lyman Street?
Yeah.
They actually connected that to the post office. And that was
Okay.
an existing right of way, and they built a section. Like they had highlighted some parts that they could create connectivity, already had access or easements or even owned it. And they did build a little piece there. That's part of the overall
So maybe
trail.
that's what she was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, because I assumed $1 million a mile, like any regular rail trail.
but they have
Right.
some additional like tunnels and overhead bridges. So it's
So
and-
they're planning to go under 495.
Yeah, if you Google, we did this with Trails Committee, right, Brian, where we Googled, or maybe it was this group, or because I remember, Brian, didn't you Google it? Like, we Googled feasibility study BWALT, and we found their prices, and it was just tens of $1 million, but they had a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically. I know I found something, but I don't recall the dollar figure on it. I don't recall reading about a tunnel under 495 because that sounds awesome.
It does include a tunnel under 495.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to talk to Berlin too, because it would be interesting. It would be important to know if there's any prospect for them connecting it up with the Mass Central Rail Trail. I mean, I think there's benefits to this within town, regardless of connecting up with Westboro and Berlin, but obviously it's got a whole nother, takes on a whole nother life when those two are included. So I'm gathering all the information, and we'll see where we get. So.
Well, part of why I'm kind of asking for a review is preparing us for presenting to the CPC. And if we have 4 applications, a common question that's asked is, what are our priorities? If all the applications couldn't be allowed in this given year, what are our priorities in terms of sense of timing, what needs to happen, and so on. So I wanted to open it up to the members for feedback on that. And what do we feel are the top, what are our feelings on the priority of these and the practicality of them and things like that. Could I get any feedback?
I think that the aqueduct, I think, is the oldest target, right? That's been, we or someone prior to all of us has been going after that since the 90s.
It's fair to
Um,
say.
And I think that in the world of feasibility, it seems to have really come back up to approaching feasible, right? I think, a few years ago, it seemed like a lofty goal that was unachievable. Now it seems like there could be a path to accomplishing it. A lot of these kind of work together. My commentary on the ADA trails, that's kind of it's an easy one. That's something that everyone keeps asking for. I mean, easy in so much as it doesn't, other than the money part of it, it's like a totally doable project. I think the BWALT connector really I think that's dependent on if we get access through the aqueduct. But I guess presenting my opinion, I feel like the aqueduct, if I had to prioritize them, I'd probably put the aqueduct at the top, and that's purely my opinion only because I think it's the oldest target.
Yeah, I would agree with that being the top priority, and I'm agnostic on the rest.
And John, where does replenishing the conservation fund, I mean, is that something fairly high as well, since we know of some property targets that are going to come up this year?
Well, I think I could summarize our approach as saying every year the Open Space Committee sponsors it, and we've come up short a number of times because of other priorities for community preservation money. And so I feel like we're always kind of pushing it forward so that we don't lose the opportunity. And if there were no other projects that would use open space money, then we could always make the case, well, we need to have a minimum, which in this year will be 60,000 something will be the minimum 10% amount, right? But it's always subject to either paring it back or pushing it down the road. If not only can we make a case for the others, but if there's enough other competing projects that seem higher priority or higher urgency. And then sometimes the committee may feel like, well, let's just pass on it and sort of leave the money uncommitted. So bouncing off what Brian said, the aqueduct has been a target for a long time, so that is exciting. And the senior center trail is seemingly a very easy project to execute relatively. And then the possibility of grants, makes it very affordable. So, frankly, I think we should, I guess my input would be in response to that is the conservation fund article shouldn't supersede the other two that for the senior center trail and the aqueduct, and not necessarily the feasibility study on the multi-use trail either, if all have viability to move forward. And, we do have a fairly substantial conservation fund right now. So, if we're pressed, then we don't have any other target that we have to purchase right now. We're expecting the opportunity for another Howard Street parcel. And if we just say that's going to cost another 400,000, then, we'll be at a lower level again. So continually making the case that we may need it is really what we're all about as a committee, right?
So in that case, it makes sense to take the 3 projects, list them in the order, and then fourth in order would be replenishment of the conservation fund.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Okay.
The one with the most questions, and Ashley has verified this. You've still got information unknown, and I guess it's going to come down to whether you feel you have enough for the application, where those questions wouldn't give it pause. And maybe you decide that you want to do it in a future year. So I'm kind of going to leave that in your lap.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that I need to, is there a vote or anything we need to take today? Because the application date is November 4th. That's my only question. You know, if I'm still in information gathering over the course of the next week, and I do decide, you know what, I think we have enough information, how do I make sure that everybody's informed and we've all agreed to move it forward?
I feel like when we voted to move it forward,
Yeah, that's true. we
that
did.
the committee formally supports the creation of the application. None of us volunteered to help you, which is sad, but if you need help, ask. And then, you know, I think we're going to leave it to your judgment to say, I think I got enough. And we already talked about the deadline being soft. So I feel like you've got a month, you know, that as long as if you feel like you're going to have enough to put it together, and you know, Mia can tell Kathy that it's coming, Kathy Jubert, and if you felt like you had something by first week of December, then I would keep doing it. You know, if you feel you're meeting a number of roadblocks and it's just not coming together, then no harm, you know, in trying, and you'll know enough to bring it forward in a future year. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I want to make sure that I answer all these questions. And if it does, yeah, if it's feeling wishy-washy and I don't feel comfortable standing behind it in front of the CPC, then I'm going to say, let's hold off. But that's helpful because it's just been a really busy couple weeks and I haven't had a chance to do a lot of that information gathering I wanted to. So
Yep, I
that's
totally
great.
get it.
So I'll keep moving. I'll keep moving forward and we'll see where we get. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions or feedback on these articles or these applications, I should call them?
John, can we just review the dollars again? I was just trying to take some notes.
Looks like we have the, well, going by the way they're listed on the agenda, the conservation fund application was written for 400,000. It, you know, and it, I did that because we sort of agreed to do that, and knowing that sometimes there's a compromise to say, you know, what if we have 100 or 200,000? Nonetheless, that's the way that was written. The accessible trail at Senior Center seems firm at the 28,500 number. The Aqueduct Bridge, you're waiting to get a little more detail, according to Mia. Could be as high as 100, let's just say, right? And then the, you know, the Ashley's estimate for the Waterman, from Waterman was 85, but seems to be some question marks about whether that, you know, needs to be put higher. I'm going to leave that up for question. Does that answer it, Brian?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
And I don't know of, I don't know yet of all the other applications that might come in. I do know there's probably one coming for affordable housing that will likely be several $100,000. I think it's money for the next project that the Northborough Affordable Housing Corp wants to pursue.
Just the
and
dog
the
park, right?
Oh, right. But that's a study as well, right?
Mm-hmm. What was that? I feel like Ally told me how much they were asking for. I can't remember. 100, 200?
I have the number. I can try to look for it.
But I don't know of any other big project that would prevent some of these smaller ones from going through. So
How much, what is the, I guess there's not an annual budget. You kind of can carry forward amounts and you don't have to spend all of it in any given year, but is there like a sense of how much you have for the year?
there will be, in new revenue, it will be I'd say at least 650,000. I'm averaging from last year. It may be higher. The state match that came in last year will be part of our available monies. And then the unreserved account, basically what's been saved. I think we used a substantial portion of it, but I believe there's still a few 100,000 left. So I think that there'll be over $1 million of available monies if we really needed it. But the committee would want to leave some reserve if possible. I think we used a lot of the reserve last town meeting.
I found the
So-
number for the dog park if you'd like. It's
Yes.
35,500 for an initial site survey and base plan development.
Well, that's small beans. Thought it'd be
Yeah.
more for some reason. Okay.
Initial site survey, and how many rounds is that going to take to
So I
put it
I
into?
think they're gonna just give them the list. I think Northborough Unleashed, they did the tours of all the different sites. And I think the Rec Commission has worked with Northborough Unleashed to make a short list. And the landscape architect is going to review each of those professionally, pros and cons. Then they're going to make a final determination and do a site survey and base plan.
Very good. So I think that's the key application from Parks and Rec. I believe there's another smaller one, but I don't think there's anything large.
And nothing from historic this time around? You don't know
I
yet,
don't-
probably.
I don't know of a project. Leslie, know of anything? You still in historic, Leslie? Yes.
Yeah, I am. Yes, we have a few, smaller items, but yes. Plus White Cliffs.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes. Yeah, we've got actually an exciting one for the Brigham Street burial ground to try to spruce that up a bit, take down some trees and put up a cool like granite and chain.
Oh, that's
fence.
a good idea.
Yeah,
That's
it should be
a really
pretty.
good
Yeah,
idea.
sort of delineated a little better. That's nice.
Yeah,
That's
so this would be
something-
nice.
Yeah.
And then actually put a little gravel pullover spot too.
So the White Cliffs bond payment will be over 200,000. So that's a chunk. Any other comments on these? I appreciate the feedback. I think we're putting the priorities in the right places. All right. Is there any other new business, new comments, anything at all?
I recommend you do take a vote for the two coming from your committee, the up to $400,000 for the open space fund. And you could say like up to 100 or up to 85 for the multi-use trail application, just in case later someone says, was there ever a vote at a meeting, discussion and a vote at a meeting?
Regarding the numbers?
Yeah, well, to submit the application with this number.
Okay. Well, then I'll entertain, let's entertain separate motions, and one would be with regard to the application for the conservation fund at the amount of 400,000.
Yeah, John, I move we vote to submit application for the Conservation Fund for Open Space Protection in the amount of $400,000.
Second,
Seconded by Leslie. Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Starting with Leslie.
aye.
Brian,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
and John, yes. So we are 9-0 confirmed on that. Then I would entertain a motion with regard to the application for the multi-use trail feasibility. That we're going to say up to 100,000. I mean, we weren't really even sure that that was going to be the number, but
Yeah, I'll move to submit a CPC application for the multi-use trail feasibility study for up to $100,000.
Second?
that was Scott.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, take another roll call vote. This would be regarding the approval of the application for the multi-use trail up to 100,000. Leslie,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Michelle,
No,
Bill,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
and John, yes. So we were 8 in favor and 1 against with regard to approving for the application up to 100,000.
Is it okay to ask why Michelle is opposed?
sure.
ask
I
her.
voted opposed to it at the planning board meeting because I feel like the town should really consider the first 2 applicants and see where it goes from that, and then consider it in a future year. So almost similar to what John was discussing with Ashley in the beginning. So that's why I'm not really in favor of spending the money this year.
Fair enough.
So it's a timing issue, not a, or a prioritization issue, not necessarily opposed to the
I think
concept.
it's a huge project. The bridge is a huge project, and I personally think when you go to town meeting, you'll want to get people to back you on that versus a trail that we don't really know a lot about is going to be very expensive. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think if it was to go with the Westboro, it would have gone before. And I think you just need to prove to the public that you can do the bridge first and get that out there and get that underway and let the public buy into that, and then move forward with this on the next one of the year after. We've already talked about these are multi-year projects. So I think the 100,000 would go beneficial to stay in the fund and look on a future later down the line, because I think Mia is correct when you start to look at those numbers. This is a multi-million-dollar project, and it's going to be a lot of cash and a lot of going back and forth. And you're probably going to see a lot of these designs go up to 300, 400, 500,000 before you get into the building costs.
Those are some good points.
Thanks, Michelle.
Anyone else with any comment along those lines?
I mean,
Well-
I can just make my, I'm not gonna fight anybody tooth and nail on it, but I just think they complement each other very well. The Aqueduct Bridge and this one, and this is at a much earlier stage than where the Aqueduct Bridge is. So I just feel like it's definitely a huge project, would be lots of dollars, but if we're gonna make this Aqueduct Bridge, and yes, we do have access to the Aqueduct Trail, which is awesome, so it makes sense regardless of whether the multi-use trail happens or not. But it would be nice to kind of have it teed up. If we got this feasibility study and it looked like it was something that the town wanted to do, and the Aqueduct Bridge was underway, we kind of have this already teed up to go. But that's just my take. I don't think it would harm it terribly to put it forward in a future year, but I don't see why it needs to wait. But that's just me. As long as I get all the information in time.
I think we're behind you, Ashley, on your effort. And consistent with our previous meeting, we supported your moving the ball on it. And unfortunately, it's a lot in your own lap. But so I personally think keep moving the ball, and then by your own admission, if it looks like there's still too many loose ends, then it may be best to wait. I think that supports Michelle's point that I really think is valid. We do have to think down the road. How many things do we throw up before town meeting? We don't usually get much objection, but if the two things compete or it's just too confusing, she brings up a valid point. So I have to agree with that also.
Do you mind if I speak, John?
I do not. You're always welcome.
Well, I don't want to cut anybody else off. So I think you may have noticed, like I've discussed with Kathy, and staff just doesn't have the capacity. That's why this isn't all on Ashley. It's because we don't have the capacity to run this many large projects. My first obligation is always enforcement of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Northborough Wetlands Bylaw. And that's just continual customer service, continual issuing of permits and inspections. And so, I can really only take on a few projects at a time outside of that. So that's why, and we'd already started the bridge, so the bridge is really what I'm trying to push forward, and then the ADA trail as well. Because I would love to see, but my favorite project is the ADA trail, but I don't pay taxes here. So, but I'd love to see Northborough having an ADA trail, and the way that it came forward from one of the Trails Committee members. So I'm definitely not opposed to the multi-use trail. I think it'd be a great thing for Northborough. And a lot of times these things take multiple years to get through. So even if you are, all the outreach you're doing now, Ashley, and all the work you're doing now, no work is being lost, even if you do not put forth a CPC application this year, because next year, if as hand in hand with that, I am, because I'm having those discussions with MWRA, the town administrator has changed courses as of, I think it was not this Friday, but a week ago Friday, that the original plan was to take ownership of the bridge, and he changed course to just have an easement over the bridge. So I had to go back to MWRA. I did speak with contact there, Sean Navin, but I was able to also talk about resurfacing, and I really did try to advocate, are there any other areas that have been resurfaced, active aqueducts? And he said, no active aqueducts because of the maintenance issue, because when there is a break that is actually supplying water to primary supply, the difference between it just being mowed. And then the last priority habitat in town, it crosses through the last priority habitat in town. There's actually areas of the aqueduct trail that can't even be mowed for much of the year. So it will never be paved. We'll definitely have to look at over by Bartlett Street, alternative locations. So, even if this year isn't the year, getting this discussion started, you're still getting the ball rolling. And no, like I said, no work is lost, but I do worry about staff capacity, because they're, even now, trying to chase people for those numbers and make the copies, things like that. So staff is already a little bit, I'm stretched a little thin with the applications we have, which is why I haven't been able to help Ashley, and that she's kind of on her own on this.
That's fine. And I didn't, I wanted to do this kind of groundwork first to make sure it was even something we wanted to pursue before bothering staff, which is why it's kind of been going the way it's going. With this feasibility study estimate we got, is that something we can just use in a future year if, we didn't go forward with the application, or would I just have to ask him for an updated one next year?
Yeah, you get it in writing, and then you just ask, and generally they just add like 3 to 5%, depending on how cost of living has gone up.
Inflation. Okay.
Yeah, like if it's a wood project, they'd inflate that. If it's a ductile iron project, they'd inflate that. But this is like our design went from 25,000 up to 28,500 for the design of the trail. So that was just a normal, like 10% inflation. So.
Can we try to meet again then? Let's say just before the December CPC, we could get, an update from Ashley, kind of get a pulse of how we're feeling about it at that point in time. But nothing changes with what we've voted to do and, our support for the effort. I think, if I could state it that way.
Yeah. When is the CPC meeting? December what?
December the 2nd. Tentatively, we're waiting for members to confirm, but it's the first Thursday of December. Does the Open Space Committee feel like we could meet on the 29th of November? It's the last Monday. It's right after Thanksgiving weekend, I know, but we don't have a whole lot of other agenda items that are going to make it a real long meeting. But we could touch base on this project and any other changes and get our strategy straight for CPC.
So our regular meeting night would actually be the 22nd.
Well, I guess, yeah, I was thinking
But that's
last
actually
Monday.
that's actually 2 of my kids' birthdays, so I shouldn't be
Oh.
shouldn't be promoting that, but I could make the
There you go.
29th too, but I was just looking at my calendar. It is-
Either one works for me.
29's fine for me.
29th, okay. See-
Works.
Okay, Mia, do you know if there's any conflicts or do you have to check? In town?
They're usually the 5th, whenever you get to the 5th of something, no one schedules things on the 5th.
Okay,
You know, there's no recurring meetings. But I'm gonna pull up.
Yeah, John, it looks like there'd be a Board of Selectmen on the 22nd, so the 29th would be preferred for me.
okay, great. Well, let's give it a try on the 29th at 7. We'll do a re-review of CPC and any other new business that comes up. Is that fair?
No other boards are scheduled on Zoom that night. And as you get closer, John, you can make the decision whether it's in person or Zoom.
Okay. Any other items that anyone wants to bring up? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Keep it short.
Do we have to vote on whether the next meeting would be remote or not, actually?
Oh, we do. I vote to keep it remote.
I do too. How did you know, Ashley? Was I that transparent?
I didn't, I thought Mia said that we would just think about it.
Yeah,
I-
usually the
I-
chairman determines it.
Sure, sure.
But I wanted to at least have an opportunity to
Yeah,
express
It's a good idea.
opinions if possible.
As a general question of the population, do people feel like remote is just so much damn more convenient? Or do you still want to limit in-person meetings, or is it both?
Both for me.
Same.
I mean, I think if we were to meet in person, I would only do it if everybody were wearing masks, regardless of vaccination status. Maybe it's because of my work, but I'm not going into a group of people without masks at this point, regardless of vaccination status. So I would meet inside, but only if everybody agreed to wear masks.
I think the
But I still
town
would
still
prefer, I
has
think the
a,
accessibility, I think there are other reasons too, but
like the town still has a mask rule for any buildings. So
Yeah.
we would be obligated to per town rules.
Let's stay remote on this next meeting. We don't have, our subject matter is easy to discuss remotely, and I have no problem with it. I was just curious.
okay, thank you. Motion to
Right.
adjourn?
I moved to adjourn.
Second.
Thanks, Leslie. You may be the first one to vote. Go ahead,
Mm.
Yes.
Leslie. Brian,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
and John, yes. Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thank
sorry again
you.
for the
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
disconnection early on, and we'll see you at the end of November.
Happy Thanksgiving, I
Thank you.
guess.
Happy
Yeah.
Have a great
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Take care.
Thanksgiving.